G'day chaps, 'tis I, Clownpuncher139. I like Batman. I like Pokemon. So naturally, I did something stupid to combine them and made a video about it in celebration of Scarlet and Violet. And what better content to make for Pokemon than the most commonly played type of video game challenge? A Nuzlocke. If you've watched basically anyone that makes quality gaming content on this site, you probably know what a Nuzlocke is. But in the slight chance that you don't, it's basically just Kaizo Pokemon. You can only catch one Pokemon per route, and if it ever faints in battle, it's literally dead and can never be used again. There are some other rules I'll explain in a second, but those are the most important. And to make this at least somewhat appealing to my channel of Bat fanatics, I'm making this a themed run. On top of only getting one Pokemon per route, I can only use Pokemon that are Batman themed. What that means, who really knows? But for the sake of this challenge, I made a list of Pokemon I can relate to Batman characters, and I can only use those mons for the run. You'll see what they are soon enough. Since it's the only mainline game I've played at this point, I'll be doing this run in Pokemon Shield. And yeah, people consider this one of the easiest games too, but I wanted a first easy Nuzlocke and this is the only game I had. The rules are as follows. If you don't care, just skip to the time on screen to get to the run. Or if you want more details, check the description. 1. I can only use the first Batman-themed Pokemon I find on any route. For the Wild Area and Isle of Armor, I can only catch one Mon for my first visit along with one additional after each defeated gym. 2. If a Pokemon faints, it is dead and must be boxed permanently. 3. I can use items in battle, but I can't use them 2 turns in a row, and definitely no X items. 4. No guides except to tell me the levels of the gym leaders so I don't severely overlevel them, and absolutely no damage calculators. 5. No cheating by spawning in rare or EXP candies. And 6. No Dynamaxing except for grinding in raid dens. Got all that? Great. Now let's get to the run. Since I want the hardest run possible, I chose Sobble, which gives Hop Scorbunny and Leon Grookey. Both likely the most difficult for any player to deal with. Yes, I'm taking on the hardest challenge possible despite this being my first Nuzlocke. And to all you Poké-tubers salivating at the chance to react to a brand new face performing a terrible Nuzlocke, go away. Right now. Seriously, click off the video. You're stealing my views and will force me to live up to my name and punch you clowns in the face if you don't. Don't react to my videos. I will find you. And I will punch you. After a quick hop fight and even more cutscenes, it's time to throw Sobble in the trash and get our real starter. You didn't think I'd start with anything other than Zubat, did you? So I hatched one in a completed save file, got it up to level 5, and transferred it to this new file through Pokemon Home, and naturally named it Batman. This is our real starter and will carry us throughout the whole game. Unfortunately, Zubat is a pretty bad Pokemon. The one I got has a pretty decent lonely nature, plus attack and minus defense, which I'll take. But Zubat still needs all the help it can get. Its base stats are atrocious, and its early move pool leaves a lot to be desired. It does evolve into Crobat though, which is an amazing Pokemon, so we've just gotta level him up. The only way to do that though, is to get him a friend. So right after I buy some berries and change into more appropriate attire,
I only work in black. And sometimes very, very dark gray.
I head over to Route 2 and get a lucky first encounter in the shaking grass, a Purloin, that I catch and nickname Catwoman. It has a pretty good hardy neutral nature, which I'll also take, as well as the Unburden ability. Though Purloin and Liepard are already pretty fast as is, so I don't think this ability will help too much. I'm not exactly a fan of this line, but I can't lie that it really carried me throughout the early game. It starts with Fake Out of all moves, a fantastic priority move that does pretty good damage and guaranteed flinches whoever you hit. This one move pretty much carried me through the route. Because contrary to popular belief, Route 2 is freaking scary without a powerful starter by your side. Take our first opponent, youngster Jake, whose only Pokemon is a level 6 Skwovet. This fight not only almost killed me, but also took nearly 5 minutes just to complete. Skwovet is surprisingly physically defensive for this early in the game, and wouldn't you know it, physical attacks are my only move choices. Okay, yeah, Zubat has Absorb, but its special attack is absolute dookie and it's only 20 base power. This thing is basically useless. Normally by this point, you'd have a starter with a stab special move that could annihilate this fat squirrel. I don't have that and have to rely on chip damage from 2 really weak Pokemon. I of course start with Fake Out for some chip damage, then start growling away to lower this thing's attack as much as possible. It unfortunately retaliates with a myriad of Tail Whips to counteract this move, lowering my defense. I start scratching away, and just look at how little damage I do compared to how much it does to me. This wasn't even a crit! Thankfully I had an Oran Berry at the ready to heal me back to full, and I started lowering his attack again. I switched into Zubat because I need to get rid of these defense drops and realized that my only move to use against it is the aforementioned Absorb. I try confusing it with Supersonic, but it ends up always breaking through confusion, so that was pretty worthless. I end up spending a minute chipping it down with a few absorbs before swapping back to Purloin to get rid of the defense drops and actually do some decent damage, finishing it off with a Fake Out and a single scratch. This was the first youngster fight in the game, and I nearly lost on multiple occasions. How do you think the rest of the fights will fare? Well, after killing a few wild Pokemon to get equal to their levels, the following Lass and Youngster were no trouble. I used the same strategy on the Lass's Choodle, Fake Out then growl it into oblivion before finally scratching it down in safety. And Lass was the Youngster in front of Magnolia's house. He actually has 2 Pokemon, a Blipbug and a Nickit. The Blipbug is a little scary since it has Struggle Bug, which is super effective against Purloin. Thankfully it doesn't do much damage, and I can KO it with just 2 more scratches. As for Nickits, I just reuse the same strategy of growling it into submission before scratching it down. I did have to bring in Zubat to clean up towards the end after a few too many Tail Whips, but I was able to take him down and could finally make it to Magnolia's house. By this point, I have literally been recording for over an hour and only now made it to the second Hop fight. Most people consider this fight a joke, and understandably so, but it terrified me. If a single freaking Squovit gave me trouble, how do you think I'll fare against 3 Pokemon, one of them a really powerful starter? Well, there is one saving grace that will keep this run alive. Behind Magnolia's house is the TM for Payback, a 50 power physical dark move that doubles in power if the opponent moves before you. Seeing as both Purloin and Zubat are physical attackers, I gladly taught it to both of them, gave them each an Oran Berry for recovery in the fight, and jumped in against Hop. I naturally started with a Fake Out followed by Payback to bring Wooloo into the red. It growls me, which isn't ideal, but I can still manage as I take it down with another Payback. And then he sends in his level 8 Scorbunny. This thing is terrifying as it has Ember, which is not only stab, but also a special attack, which means it won't be affected by Growl. And who could forget the fact that it has a 10% chance to burn, which it gets on the very first attack. So even though Purloin ends up moving second, it does next to no damage with Payback because of the attack cut. I'm forced to switch into Zubat, taking another Ember for a decent chunk of damage. I take another and then retaliate with Payback, bringing Scorbunny down to about a third, while I'm left with just above half. I'm probably dead to a crit, but I have to take the risk. I click Payback, and Hop ends up going for Tackle, which actually does more than Ember and definitely would have killed if it was a crit. But it doesn't, and my Oran Berry heals me back just above half as Payback takes Scorbunny down. Last is Rookity, which is thankfully only level 5 and takes massive damage from Payback before only dealing a little bit with Peck. One last Payback takes it down, winning this absolutely terrifying fight. Who would have thought Hop, of all people, would give me a difficult fight, when literally the entire community deems him as a joke? Again, understandably so, but good lord, man! After that heart attack of a fight, I headed to the train station and went off to the wild area, within which I was able to get my next encounter. In the Dappled Grove, I was able to pick up a Badoo that I caught and named Poison Ivy. I spent a little time in camp getting Ivy and Batman's friendship up, then headed to Motostoke to get ready for the gym challenge. More and more cutscenes eventually led me to the Badoo Inn and some fights with Team Yell. They were a little scary since I didn't have any super effective moves against them, but I was able to take them down nonetheless, only having to use a Cherry Berry on Purloin to cure paralysis from Zigzagoon's Lick. Even the double battle with Hop was no issue, as I just kept spamming Payback until I won. Easy stuff, step up your game, Team Yell. I also got access to the flying taxis, which I used to head back home for some more encounters. Seeing as my next major battle was once again against Hop, and how much trouble he gave me last time, I wanted to expand my team at least a little bit to make sure I could do it. So I headed back to Route 1 because I found out that there's a 5% chance of finding a Hoot Hoot in the shaking grass. I eventually found one, caught it, and nicknamed it the Court. It has the Keen Eye ability, which might be useful later, and a modest plus special attack minus attack nature, which is absolutely fantastic. I also went over to the Wedgehurst train station, which is a unique location, where I caught the Galarian Slowpoke blocking the way and named it Red Hood. Because, Galarian Slowbro has a gun. That's the joke I was making. Pokemon Gun, everyone. It has Gluttony, which should be pretty good, as well as a Lonely plus attack minus defense nature, which is alright. Galarian Slowpoke is actually more of a physical attacker, but lowered defense is not great for a relatively slow tank. I'm not going to the Isle of Armor just yet though, since I don't have any encounters available until after I beat Milo, so I just head back to Motostoke, get some hidden items like the black glasses, and face top for fight number 3. His team is basically identical to the last time, except at higher levels. Wooloo, of course, did some growling shenanigans that stopped me from taking it out with Payback. But I did actually learn something interesting here. Payback considers any opponent move as being before or after yours. So when Hop uses the potion on Wooloo, Payback actually deals double damage because he technically moved before me. So there's a fun fact for you. Anyway, after that still did basically no damage, I swapped into Slowpoke and used Confusion for some much needed big damage. Tackle did very little, and another Confusion took Wooloo down. Score Bunny is once again out second, and an Ember activates my Oranberry before I yawn to make it drowsy. I knew it could take another Ember, so just used Acid, hoping to get the special defense drop. But he just used Quick Attack for some reason, and Acid did very little as he was put to sleep. He actually stayed asleep for quite a while, but I only got one special defense drop and ended up switching to Confusion for better damage. I was only able to get one off before he woke up and used Ember, bringing me down just above the red. I knew I had to switch, so swapped into Catwoman, thankfully only taking a growl as I did. I don't know why I didn't just use Fake Out, but after taking an Ember for half my health, Payback was enough to take the rabbit down, leaving just Rookity. I was a bit too nervous to stay in, so swapped into Batman, who took a peck for about a third. After taking another peck into the yellow, Payback did just over half. Unfortunately though, Rookity has Unnerve, preventing me from eating any berries, so I have to switch back into Catwoman for some Fake Out damage before healing her up with a potion. Thankfully, Rookity only used Leer twice, and one more Payback was enough to take the bird down. A bit of a scary fight that, without that potion, probably would have resulted in a death. Before I head on to Route 3, I grab the TM for Protect from the nearby Pokemart and teach it to a few of my Mons. I've always severely underestimated how useful this move is, so getting it this early will really come in handy. On Route 3 itself, I jump into the rustling grass and end up finding a Machop, which I catch and nickname Bane. It has the Guts ability, which is absolutely amazing, but also has an Impish plus defense and minus special attack nature, which is pretty great too. The trainers on Route 3 were mostly harmless, except for Postman Tad right at the end. He has a Delibird. A pretty harmless Pokemon normally, but it's also kinda terrifying. Delibird only knows Present, a normal move with randomly decided base power. It has a 40% chance of only being 40 base power, a 30% chance of being 80 power, and a 10% chance of being a whopping 120 power. Plus an extra 20% that doesn't matter, don't worry about it. This random chance is terrifying, and nearly got one of my Mons killed. I obviously start with Fake Out and Payback to bring it below half, but I know another won't kill as Present takes me below half, which I assume was the 40 power one since Delibird is actually rather powerful this early in the game. I don't have anything with super effective damage, so just send in Bane for the most raw power. Unfortunately, he gets hit super low as well, and even though a berry is able to heal him above half, I don't think he can take another, especially if it gets one of the higher attacks. I end up taking the risk and realize that it actually got the 80 power move last time as it does much less damage on this hit as I hit it with a low sweep, which gets a clutch crit and takes this terrifying Santa imitation down. Go back to the North Pole and take Cobblepot with you, you bastard! The rest of the route was no issue, but man, that bird was scary. Heading into the Galar Mine, I'm able to pick up a Timber that I named Nightwing, which has a Careful plus special defense minus special attack nature, which is pretty good, as well as the ability Sheer Force, which might come in handy later. But for now, he's going in the box. I've already got a fighting type on the team. The trainers throughout the mine were no issue since I have Ivy and Bane, bringing us back to the Batman and Robin days and absolutely annihilating everyone in sight. And just before we can exit, we have to deal with Bede, who really shouldn't be a problem when he uses psychic types, and my main lead is a dark type. You probably know how this goes. Spam payback to take everything down in a max of 2 hits. I did get a bit of a scare from Hatena surviving and retaliating with Disarming Voice, but it didn't even do half, so I was fine. Gothita also survived one, but only used Pound in return, so one more payback took it down just fine. Alright, on to Route 4, which provided nothing interesting aside from me catching an Eevee that I named Mr. Freeze, with the intention of turning into a Glaceon sometime down the road. For the sake of the challenge, I won't be using it until I can actually evolve it into a Glaceon, so into the box it goes. All the trainers went down pretty easily aside from this guy with a Butterfree that just took way too damn long for me to defeat. But I was able to get it, so it doesn't matter. Moving on. Specifically, on to the next true roadblock of the game, Milo the Grass Leader. Despite having 2 flying types and 2 poison types on my team, I'm incredibly nervous for this fight. The only poison move I have is Poison Fang on Zubat, which is a good move, but is on a pretty terrible Pokemon even if he does quad resist grass. I know I can't win with just him, so I train up just a little bit on the extra trainers on Route 4 to evolve Badoo into Roselia and get Hoot Hoot to learn Air Slash, a 75 base power special move that I thought would be pretty instrumental to me winning the fight. I think I have a pretty solid plan, so step onto the field as ready as I'll ever be. First up for Milo is Gossifleur while I send in Poison Ivy. My plan was to lay down some Toxic Spikes to badly poison Eldegoss when it comes in, but that plan was completely thrown out the window because I forgot that Gossifleur has Rapid Spin, completely throwing my spikes away. So there goes that plan. On the plus side, this contact move does end up poisoning Gossifleur through Ivy's Poison Point ability, so now it's on a timer. I think it's in my best interest to switch, so I go into Catwoman, who only takes a third from Magical Leaf. Fake Out lets me stall a bit of the poison, and I probably should have used Protect to stall a bit more, but I just used Payback and took a good deal more from the next Magical Leaf. But knowing it was going to die to poison next turn, I swap into the Court and take minimal damage from Round. Poison takes out the Gossifleur, and now I have a mostly full health Pokemon in ready to take on his Dynamax Eldegoss. Being fairly certain I can take the hit, I go for Air Slash to get as much damage in as possible. I take the max overgrowth decently well and am brought above half by my berry. But unfortunately, Eldegoss is a special tank and takes my Air Slash for absolute chip damage. I'm fairly confident I can take another, so just go for Air Slash again to rack up as much damage as I can and hope for a crit. I survive on just 5 HP and Air Slash again does minimal damage, so I'm forced to switch into Batman, who quad resists the incoming max overgrowth, only taking about a quarter damage. Dynamax is thankfully over, so I hit it with a Poison Fang that gets it below half and actually gets the Toxic off. I'm basically guaranteed to win, so go for Protect to rack up that little bit more poison damage. Another Poison Fang brings it into the red as it uses Round to bring me into the red as well, and the poison just barely doesn't finish it off. I was expecting Milo to heal, but he actually doesn't, and one more Poison Fang is enough to secure the win. That was way too close at the end there. I really wasn't expecting him to switch things up after using Magical Leaf 5 turns in a row. But regardless, that wins me the Grass Badge, and I can move on with 0 deaths. Oh, and Catwoman evolved into Liepard, which is a much-needed power upgrade. Before heading off to Gym 2, however, I headed to the Isle of Armor, humiliating Avery along the way, and ran all the way to the Pot Bottom Desert to catch a Sandile that I named Killer Croc. Crocodile is an amazing Pokemon regardless of what ability it gets, but this one happened to have Intimidate, which is perfect for this run along with a hardy neutral nature, which I'll always take. Heading on to Route 5, there's a couple battles, none of which are worth talking about, but more importantly, I can find an Esper in the shaking grass that I catch and name Harley. But she's also going in the box for now. On this same route, in the midst of battling, Zubat finally evolves into Golbat, another much needed power-up. This let me confidently take on the Team Yell Grunts on the bridge, both of which were taken down with no issues. But after that is yet another fight with Hop, which I'm once again terrified of. He's rolling with basically the same squad, but with some upgrades of a Corvisquire and Raboot. Wooloo is still no issue, as just one low sweep from Bane is enough to take it out, albeit with a crit that I hope didn't matter. Next out is Corvisquire, which I stay in against since I don't have a clean switch available, and I just go for revenge against his Peck. It does just under half as revenge barely does a quarter. So I'm forced to switch and go into Batman, who takes minimal damage from Fury attack. Payback followed by Poison Fang is enough to down this bird, as it only leers me in return. Last is Raboot, so I stay in and go for another Poison Fang, actually getting the Toxic again. Flame Charge does big damage to me though, while also boosting its speed, so I might not be able to KO it. I go for Protect to rack up more poison damage, but for some reason Hop goes for Double Kick. A move I quad resist instead of the obvious Flame Charge KO. Weird, but I don't take the risk staying in and instead switch to Red Hood, but he goes for Double Kick again. Hop, didn't you just say you've started to understand type matchups? How the hell is your brother the champion?
You fool!
Either way, I had given Slowpoke the rocky helmet I found back on the island before this fight, so Raboot actually just KOs itself to the recoil damage and poison. Nice. This win also lets Batman evolve once more since my friendship was high enough, evolving it into a super powerful Crobat. While it's rather frail, it's incredibly strong and faster than like 90% of all other Pokemon, so it's great to have this early on. A few more easy trainers eventually brings me to Hulbury, where I can face the next gym leader, Nessa, and her water types. And I won't even bother wasting time here, Roselia absolutely sweeps through this whole gym. I tarted the Magical Leaf TM that I got from Milo, along with giving her a Person Berry to heal off any potential confusion she may get from Water Pulse. So first up is Goldeen, which is literally one of the worst Pokemon ever made, so it's pretty much perfect setup fodder. I start by setting up Gross to boost my attack, as Goldeen goes for Agility, which is perfectly fine by me. It then goes for Horn Attack instead of Water Pulse, which definitely does more damage and means I put that berry on for nothing. I use another Growth just to make sure that I can one-shot her eventual ace, Dreadnought. I set up one more to be certain, but the next Horn Attack gets a crit, leaving me just below a third. My plan might just be ruined. I go for Protect to see if she's changing up her move, but it doesn't look like she is. I have to risk it and go for Magical Leaf, and Horn Attack leaves me on just 8 HP as Magical Leaf gets the KO and sends in Arrokuda. I go ahead and use a Super Potion to heal myself up, as Arrokuda only goes for Bite, dealing about a quarter. Apparently though, it was completely unnecessary, as Roselia somehow outspeeds and can OHKO Arrokuda with Magical Leaf. That's a little surprising, but I'll take the win. Last out is her ace, a Dynamax Dreadnought. I set up the growth specifically for this, so here's hoping I outspeed. And I do, and the 4x super effective Stab 3 attack boosted Magical Leaf is enough for the OHKO, winning me the Water Badge. One left of the Grass Fire Water trio, time to head back to Motostoke and get me that Fire Badge. On the way, I stop through the second Galar Mine where I catch a Wimpod that I named Nigma. It was this or Garbodor, and Trubbish is only on Route 3, so it was that or Machop, and I chose the obvious fighter. It has a lonely plus attack minus defense nature, which is alright, I guess. But it's also pretty much useless until it evolves, so he'll be a backseater for now. A little deeper into the mine, we have our next encounter with Bede, but the only change to his team is the addition of a Ponyta. No evolutions. So I'll let you guess how this fight went. OHKO's on everyone from Catwoman with Assurance, while he didn't get a single attack off. Nice job. None of the other trainers in the mine provided any challenge, not even the double battle with Team Yell. Ironically, the only scary thing was a literal jump scare from a Stunfisk that trapped me in. I was able to beat it, but it gave me quite the scare, it did. I was eventually able to exit the mine, which led me to the first fight against Marnie in the Badoo Inn. As I'm jamming out to the music, I'm reminded of the fact that she's a dark trainer with a non-dark Krogunk on her team as her lead. So despite my attempts to get the better of her, Bane needs to temporarily sit this one out as I bring in Red Hood. Unfortunately, I'm quickly reminded that she still has dark moves on this frog, as she uses Sucker Punch to bring me down to just over a quarter. Thankfully, my Zen Headbutt is able to connect, giving me the OHKO. But next she sends in Scraggy, which I definitely can't stay in against. So I swap back into Bane and take a Headbutt for only a quarter. I go for revenge, expecting her to outspeed, which she does, but she also gets the flinch on her next headbutt, leaving me just under half. I can survive another that isn't a crit, so I take the risk, and I don't flinch and can KO with revenge. Last is more Pico, surprisingly strong despite being a Pikachu clone, so I swap into Croc to hopefully absorb the incoming electric attack. But she actually goes for quick attack, likely seeing the kill with it against Bane. Bite then takes me below half as I use Dig, but she survives on just a sliver despite Croc holding the soft sand to boost its ground moves. I have to switch, so I go into Catwoman, not knowing she was gonna heal this turn. Whoops. Fake Out does barely anything, but I go for Protect to avoid the more dangerous Hungry phase, then use Assurance for barely any damage while Thundershock does the same. We trade Assurance and Thundershock again, still only doing chip damage, but one more is able to nab the KO and win me the fight. That was a little scary, especially with that earlier Sucker Punch, but we got through it, don't worry. Just before I go face the next gym, I run back to the Motostoke outskirts where I can catch a Hatena that I name Mad Hatter. Once again, going in the box for now, but catching this did allow Bane to evolve into a much more powerful Machoke. Perfect timing, as it's time for the third gym leader, Kabu and his fire types. Kabu is normally a pretty difficult roadblock for this game, as he's got 3 really powerful fully evolved Pokemon that just love burning you to a crisp. It's no big deal if you have a special attacking water, rock, or ground type. And wouldn't you know, my entire team is physical with only a single ground type among them. On the very small plus side, while I was over getting Croc in the Isle of Armor, I happened to pick up a very useful TR, Stealth Rocks. Stealth Rocks are the bane of any fire type, especially one like Kabu's Ace, who's also part Bug. So I taught that to Croc and braced myself for the gym. Now you'd think the gym challenge would be a cakewalk, what with it being a simple KO of a few weak Pokemon. Well, you'd be right, except for one of them. One of these weak mons is Sizzlipede, a bug type. And the Pokemon I was using to fight all these guys was a dark type. Considering I'm dragging this out for way longer than any sensible human would do, you can see where this is going. Yep. Our first loss of the run was to a random frickin' Sizzlipede. And Catwoman was one of our most useful team members as well. So this loss just hurts so much more. I lost my opener to the fight, so now my strategy has completely gone out the window. Worst of all is that I'm now down a member and only have 5 Mons for the fight with Kabu because I can't sub anyone else in. This is not going to end well. Time to pray to RNGesus that things can go in my favor, cause it's not looking bright. I obviously start with Croc so I can set up Stealth Rocks, while Kabu naturally starts with Will-O-Wisp. Thankfully, I had accounted for this and gave Croc a Rossberry to heal the burn. Then I thought I'd need the attack boost, so I used Hone Claws while Kabu went for Ember. It did quite a bit of damage, but thankfully no burn. I then went for Dig, but of course Kabu goes for Will-O-Wisp again and hits to burn me again. Are you kidding me? The burn damage builds up while I'm underground, then barely even does half when I attack. I don't really have any other options, so I just go for Dig again, and he thankfully misses Fire Spin. Dig just barely doesn't KO, and I'm brought super low by the burn. I don't want to risk losing Croc, so I swap into Bane, who takes a pretty weak Ember and also gets burned. And while I was writing this, I realized how stupid I was equipping the Rossberry to Bane, when the burn would have boosted his attack thanks to Guts. Good God, why was I so stupid? You'll see just how much this impacts me shortly. Of course, on my attacking turn, Ninetales gets a crit on its next Ember, bringing me to half health, and this time doesn't get the burn. Thankfully, the low sweep takes it out, and out comes Arcanine. It takes decent damage from the rocks, but Intimidate lowers my attack. I don't know if I can survive, so swap into Red Hood, who takes a Flame Wheel for about a third. I use this opportunity to make him drowsy with Yawn, and he thankfully only goes for Will-O-Wisp. I protect to make him fall asleep, then swap into my only healthy team member, Batman. Cross Poison is thankfully enough to take him out, and in comes his ace, Scorch. It takes half its health from Stealth Rocks, but then Gigantamaxes. I debate basically forever if I should Cross Poison or Air Cutter, but eventually decide to rely on Stab to save me. Cross Poison only does about half of its remaining health, and he goes for G-Max Centiferno. And of course, it gets a crit, leaving me at just 8 HP! But as if that wasn't enough, Centiferno also puts the target in a fire spin, so I end up losing my starter! This freaking hurt. Not only did I lose my 2 original Pokemon, I lost the main man himself, Batman. Oh, but just you wait, dear viewer. The massacre has only just begun. Basically out of options, I send Red Hood back in to try and protect stall the rest of Dynamax, but he can't even survive one hit of Max Flutterby when he's burned as well. So now I lost Red Hood too. Now completely out of options, I threw in Wimpod and protected again, and he's somehow survived. I thought this was going to be my opportunity to turn this around because Wimpod has Wimp Out, which switches it out when its health is below half. But of course, the Oranberry I equipped activated first, so it doesn't switch out. This is pretty much the worst outcome, because now I don't get a free switch, so I'm forced to just try sand attacking it until it can't hit me. But it's all in vain, as another Flame Wheel is enough to send Nigma to his grave. My only remaining hope is Bane, so I send him in and choose Revenge, and thankfully Kabu just goes for Smokescreen followed by Flame Wheel, so I can hit him twice and just barely win the fight. Good lord, that was a bloodbath. And so many unnecessary deaths, all because I was stupid in how I equipped my items. God, that was so unnecessary, and now I've basically got to rebuild my team from the ground up. I end up bringing Ivy, Hatter, Nightwing, and the Court back to the team, and do a bit of raid grinding in the wild area to get them up to snuff. Meanwhile, I also caught a Woobat and Noibat that I named Batgirl and Manbat respectively. The Noibat gave me quite a bit of trouble as it just didn't want to get in the ball, and dealt a ton of damage to all my Pokemon. This thing sucks right now, but Noivern will be a pretty powerful team member later on, so I may as well. I also got super lucky and got a shiny stone from the digging duo that I immediately used to evolve Roselia into Roserade. On top of that were just a few more levels given to Nightwing to evolve him into Girder. Now my rule for trait evolutions is that I'll evolve them when they reach level 35, which is the maximum level for starter evolutions, and seems pretty fair to get a really powerful Pokemon. And don't go complaining that I just evolved Roserade this early, it's not my fault Pokemon has so many stupid evolution methods. Deal with it. Regardless, after some long and boring story stuff, I had a quick Team Yell fight that Nightwing absolutely annihilated, and I could move on to Route 5. Most of which didn't provide any troubles, except for this terrifying metronome trainer at the start of the route. Thankfully, in the midst of my raid den grinding, I found the TR for Poison Jab, which I immediately taught to Nightwing to take these stupid fairies out. I really don't like Clefairy in general. Why would they consider making this the mascot of Pokemon in the beginning? And this fight just makes me hate it that much more. But I was pretty lucky, and the only things it got from Metronome were Attract and Grass Knot. Nightwing is thankfully not a simp, constantly breaking through the attraction, and barely got any damage from Grass Knot, allowing him to poison this Hellspawn back to the underworld where it belongs.
Be gone, fuck!
The rest of the trainers weren't too bad, and I wanted to fight this double battle for the XP. And little did I know that this was the biggest mistake of my life. These doctors only have a Togetic and Pawniard, decently weak Pokemon that I thought I could handle. So I led with Nightwing and Croc, especially since I needed Croc to evolve before the gym. Croc's Intimidate was in fact the opposite of Clutch in this fight, as it activated Pawniard's Defiant ability, which instead of lowering its attack, raised it by 2 stages. I stupidly wasn't too scared of this, since I didn't think Pawniard had any dangerous moves or even had that high of an attack. And I mean, Togetic is Togetic, so whatever, you know? Boy, was I wrong to underestimate them. Naturally, I went for Dig against the Pawniard and Poison Jab against the Togetic. Meanwhile, Pawniard used Metal Claw against Nightwing and somehow got another attack boost that I completely ignored when I was playing. Togetic ended up going for Fairy Wind, which brought Nightwing super low, so I was forced to switch him out in favor of Ivy. Croc ended up just barely missing the KO against Pawniard, and Fury Cutter took him down in one hit. I was devastated by this loss because Croc was my answer to the upcoming gym. I was eventually able to get my revenge against these trainers, but losing Croc was where I knew this run was probably doomed. I fought my way to Stow-on-Side to get the fast travel point, then headed back to the wild area to do a bit more grinding so I could evolve the Court into Noctowl. I brought him and the other remains of my team into the next fight against Hop, which mostly went well. Cramorant didn't end up getting any Pikachus from Dive, so it was easy to whittle down. Then Raboot, Silly Cobra, and Toxel all went down rather easily. Again, it's Hop in the middle of his depression phase. What do you expect? I then stopped by the Pokemon Center to pick up the remains of some fossils, then headed back to Karolis on Route 5 to revive them into a Dracovish that I named Tiny, which has a bold plus defense minus attack nature, which is not great, but at least he got Strongjaw to compensate. This guy wasn't part of my original plan, but at this point I was so desperate for new team members that I just made up this connection on the spot to fill up my team. Deal with it. I had to do even more wild area grinding to get him up to snuff, and while I was doing that, I made one of the stupidest decisions of the run. I took on a wild Honedge den with Noibat, and the fact that I'm bringing it up means you can guess what happens next. Yup, I lost a Mon while grinding. This is why rare candy strats are stupid. You can lose team members in seemingly pointless fights, so cheating your way to victory just to avoid a bit of grinding is so blatantly anti-Nuzlocke that I'm surprised people still do it for serious runs. Excuse me, moving on. This was an incredibly stupid loss that I once again had to fill in with a random team member, so I just choose Woobat because who else am I gonna sub in? After that stupid loss, I headed back to Stow-on-Side and did my best to prepare for the gym. I aimlessly scrolled through my TM lists in hopes of finding something useful, and I actually ended up finding a good number of TRs during grinding that were really useful. I ended up teaching Nightwing Brutal Swing to replace Low Kick, since ghosts are immune to fighting, Tiny Crunch to make good use of Strongjaw, Ivy Venoshock, not really for the gym, but for the fights down the line, and most importantly, the Court Shadow Ball to give some much needed coverage to a Mon otherwise immune to the opposition's stab. The Court was going to be my go-to for the gym since it's immune to Ghost, but you'll see how pointless that endeavor was as we go forward. Without many other options left, I begrudgingly walked into the gym challenge. The challenge itself wasn't too bad. The most dangerous Pokemon the trainers had was a single Haunter at the end, and even that couldn't withstand a Court Shadow Ball. So with that unwarranted boost of confidence, all that remained was the leader. And judging by the video's runtime, you can probably guess how that went. Time to face Alistair and his ghost types. First up is Yamask, which can't really do much more than use Brutal Swing against Noctowl, so a Shadow Ball followed by an extra sensory to save on power points is enough to take him down. I remembered from past experiences in this fight that Cursula has Ancient Power, so not wanting my flying type to deal with that, I swapped into Nightwing, who resists. It actually just goes for Curse for some reason, cutting its own HP in half while only taking a quarter of mine in return. Since I don't plan on keeping him in for Mimikyu, I just stay in and use Brutal Swing to take the dead Coral down. I swap back into the Court, who takes a decently weak slash to just under a third. Extra Sensory breaks the disguise, and he starts setting up Hone Claws. While this is only going to affect his slash, that's also his most powerful move already, so it's kinda scary. I swap into Ivy, who takes a slash for about half, and then go for Giga Drain to get some recovery as he just goes for Baby Doll Eyes, despite outspeeding me and probably being able to kill with another slash. Giga Drain deals about half and heals me up to 3/4, so I stay in and go for another, taking another slash to almost red. Giga Drain brings me back up to half though, and it's time to face his ace, Gengar. This thing is terrifying on its own, but it's even scarier when it Gigantamaxes. I have no truly safe switches, so I hope and pray it goes for the Gmax Ghost move and swap into the Court, who would be immune. But he doesn't do that, and spells my own doom. He instead goes for Max Ooze, which doesn't actually do too much to Knock Owl, but in turn boosts its special attack. I'm brought to just 11 HP before being healed by a Citrus Berry, but I knew I was losing someone right then and there. Gengar isn't just super strong, he's also ridiculously fast, so he easily outspeeds everything on my team. I try swapping into Bane hoping he has enough special defense to survive, but it's just not gonna happen. Another Max Ooze takes him down and boosts Gengar's special attack even more. I realize this is probably the end, so just send my remaining Mons out one at a time to meet their end. First, Tiny falls to yet another Max Ooze and a Hex. Then Nightwing falls to a Venoshock. The Court to another Venoshock. Ivy to a Hex. And Batgirl to another Hex. And that was it. That was the end of the run. I tried my first ever Nuzlocke in what many consider to be the easiest Pokemon game, and lost on the 4th gym. Could I have cheated and gotten to the exact level caps of the gym leaders rather than always going in under-leveled? Yeah, probably. Could I have just played more optimally overall? Definitely. Could I have made this 10 times easier by just using Dynamax like a sane human being? Almost certainly. But most importantly, did I really have to post this humiliating run when I could have just faked it and fought Alistair again? Did I really just waste all you viewers' time by making you sit through a failed run that didn't even make it to the halfway point of the game? Did I really have to go through writing 14 pages for an incomplete challenge that will surely make me the subject of ridicule throughout the Pokemon community if they ever come across it? You're asking the guy who played Arkham City drunk, made a video essay about Doki Doki Literature Club, and wrote 15 pages for a spoiler-free review of a game all in the same year. What levels do you think I won't stoop to for the sake of content? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, chaps.